Good evening, everybody. So, how are you this evening? Could anybody try those working capital questions that I had given you in the last class? Good evening. Could you try those questions which I had discussed with you in the last class? I had given you some self-study questions. I am not getting any responses, which means that you could not try that, you could not get the time. No issues. Now that the slides are there on the website, I uploaded it today only, so you can now download them and try those questions. And before you try, I would be discussing some more questions today. You tried some from Scanner. That's very good. So were you able to understand the methodology, Amrita? Any questions, any doubts? We have in the previous classes discussed about what is working capital. We then moved to the estimation of working capital. And while estimating working capital, we tried to estimate the level of current assets that would be required in a company or in a business, and the level of current liabilities that would be required. Right? Good evening, Ganesh. So we were discussing that could you try some of the questions on working capital management. But one problem, December 2006. Okay, I'll just see if I have the questions of December 2006. I think that's too old. No, that old. I will have to search my database. I think I would be having it, but very difficult to locate right now over here. You will have to send me the snapshot of the question otherwise on WhatsApp, and then I would be able to tell you the solution to that question. In the meanwhile, yeah, Amrita wants to say something. Yeah, that will be good. So in the meanwhile, I am now moving to some more questions on working capital estimation. These are simple questions, so this I left for your self-study. I am moving to illustration number 8 now, which was asked, I think, in the last to last examination, that is December 2015 examination. This is not very difficult, but still some kind of calculation is here which might confuse you, so I thought that I should discuss that with you. Now, a newly formed company. We had discussed one question on newly formed company in the last class as well. A newly formed company has applied for a short-term loan to a commercial bank for financing its working capital requirements. Projected statement of profit and loss is as follows. Sales 20% cash, less cost of goods sold. Then you get the gross profit. Less administrative expenses of 1,40,000 and selling expenses of 1,30,000. So you get profit before tax of rupees 3 lakhs, less tax of rupees 1 lakh. So profit after tax is rupees 2 lakhs. The cost of goods sold has been derived as follows. Material which will be used during the year would be rupees 8,40,000. Wages and monthly expenses 1 month in area rupees 6,25,000. Depreciation 2,35,000. Now depreciation, as you remember, we do not include it in working capital estimation because it's a non-cash expense. Less 10%, less stock, 10% of finished goods. Less stock, 10% of finished goods, that is 1,70,000. That gives you the total of 15,30,000, which is a part of cost of goods sold. So the breakup of cost of goods sold which has been here is this, where there is a closing stock of finished goods also worth rupees 1,70,000. The figures given above relate only to the goods that have been finished and not to work in progress. Goods equal to 15% of year's production in terms of physical units are in progress on an average requiring full materials and only 40% of other expenses. The company believes in keeping 2 months consumption of material in stock. Credit allowed to customers is 2 months. Selling expenses and administrative expenses are 1 month in area. Credit allowed by suppliers is 1.5 months. You are requested by the bank to prepare an estimate of requirements of working capital of the company. Add 10% to your estimated figure to cover contingencies. Now, on the similar lines, we had already discussed one question, but this question is slightly different from that question. It's exactly not the same, because here you have been given, the stock of finished goods as 10%, and then you have also been given the work in progress separately. So I thought that we should discuss this question in the class. Is the numbers getting clear to everybody? Like the way it has been presented? Any question on any of the numbers? No. So we move to the solutions. You can, if you want, you can take a snapshot of the question itself. That will be good for reference. Even I prefer to take that. Though I have included the question also in the Excel file, but that is, the Excel file is not, is very big to see the question as well as the solution together. So I would just take a snapshot here. Hanji, so you can see the solution here. Chaliye. So here, we have to first do some calculations. So let us first find out what is work in progress in this particular situation. The question which was given to us, it said that work in progress is not included in the above figures, and this is equal to 15% of year's production in terms of physical units, and this has got full material and only 40% of other expenses. Okay, so 15% of the full material. Now total material which was utilized in this particular company, we have seen in the breakup of cost of goods sold, the total material was 8,40,000. So 15% of that is 1,26,000. That is the material component of work in progress, right? Then we have been told 40% of other expenses. So we will go to labor. Now wages and other money expenses was given to us as 6,25,000 for the entire year. So 15% of that is in work in progress. So 625 multiplied by 15%, and in that only 40% has been consumed. So in that situation, 6,25,000 multiplied by 15% multiplied by 40% gives you 37,500 rupees, which is constituted in the labor component and other expenses of work in progress. Is this getting clear to everybody? Is this getting clear to you? It's fine. Okay, so we now move to the other calculators. Finished goods actually have been given to us, so we move further. Now we have to find out that what is the total raw material consumption in this particular company during the year. So we have got the consumption in the finished goods, and we've got the consumption of raw material in work in progress. In finished goods, we have been told that 8,40,000 rupees have been invested in material, and we have calculated the raw material for work in progress is coming as 1,26,000. So total consumption is, this is the total that you purchased from your supplier of rupees 9,66,000. The question tells you that that the supplier gives you 1.5 months credit. So in order to find, it says that material is in, not the supplier situation here. The material is there मटेरियल क्या क्या लिखा है? Just 1 second. Let me check. Somewhere it should be written 2 months. Yeah. So the company believes in keeping 2 months consumption of material in stock. That has been given to us. So company believes in keeping 2 months material in stock. So that means it is 9,66,000 multiplied by 2 divided by 12. That is your raw material stock. Then we go to the next finished goods stock. This was given to us in the question as just a second. As 10%, right? So 10% of 14,65,000. Now how did we calculate this 14,65,000? I must tell you. See, the material that you have consumed is for 8,40,000. For the finished goods I'm telling about, not about the work in progress. Wages that you have utilized is 6,25,000, but you've got depreciation also of 2,35,000. Now this depreciation being a non-cash expense, so while I'm calculating the finished goods stock, I will not include the depreciation component in the finished goods, right? So from this 17 lakhs, I have reduced 2,35,000 to find out 14,65,000. Now, as the policy is to keep 10% of finished goods, so the investment in finished goods for me is 1,46,500. Is this point getting clear? Is this point getting clear? If you read the question, it is very clearly mentioned that cost of goods sold has been derived as follows. Material is 840, wages and money expenses is 625, and depreciation is 235. That makes it 17 lakhs. Now we want to say that depreciation being a non-cash expense, so we will not include it in the finished goods. So therefore 10% of the total of material and wages we've added and calculated it as finished goods stock. Now we have to calculate debtors. Now for the purpose of calculation of debtors, I have already discussed with you that you can calculate debtors on sales and you can calculate the debtors on cost of goods sold as well. The question says that 20% of the sales are on cash, so 80% of that is in debtors. While calculating debtors, as I discussed with you earlier also, debtors are calculated on cost of sales, not on the cost of production, right? So we will have to add the selling and administrative expenses as well. But let us first look at without depreciation, what would be the amount of debtors? 8,40,000 is the material consumed, 625 is the wages, that makes it 1465. From that I reduced 10% finished goods inventory, which is 1,46,500, which we did earlier because this has not been sold. To this I added the administrative and selling expenses of 2,70,000. So the total value is coming as 15,88,500 on cost of sales basis, not on the sales basis. Now out of this 15,88,500, 20% were on cash. So we have to take 80%. And there is a collection period of 2 months. So that means 15,88,500 multiplied by 80% multiplied by 2 months divided by 12 gives you the debtors on cost of sales. But in case you want the calculation to go simple, in that situation you can simply calculate the debtors on sales, where you can say that total sales were 21 lakh rupees. Out of that 80% were credit sales, and you take 2 months for that 80% to find out debtors to be 2,80,000. Both the methods are correct, so the answers can be changed according to the calculation of debtors. Coming to the calculation of creditors, now here calculation of creditors is also very, very interesting in this question. If we have to find out what is the amount of raw material which has been consumed in a particular business, what we can do is opening stock, add purchases, less closing stock. This is the formula that we have been doing. For so many years we have been doing in order to find out the material consumed, opening stock, add purchases, less closing stock. I hope everybody is familiar with this formula. Add purchases, less closing stock. What does it give you? The materials consumed, right? Now in this particular question, we have got the materials consumed. We know that the opening stock is 0. Now what we do not have is the total amount of purchases. What we do not have is the total amount of purchases, because closing stock is also there with us, which we have calculated 1,61,000. So 9,66,000 is the raw material consumed. We have got no opening stock because it's a new business. We have to find out purchases where the closing stock is 1,61,000. So we add 1,61,000 to 9,66,000 to find out the amount of purchases to be 11,27,000. Now this is the total amount of purchases. Let us find out the amount of creditors. This is for the entire year. So for 1 month it would be 1127 divided by 12, and for 1.5 months it will be 1127 divided by 12 multiplied by 1.5. So now we have got the creditors. We have been told that wages are paid 1 month in arrear. So we have got the wages for the normal production and for the work in progress. So we added the two and then we divided it by 12 to find out the outstanding wages. Similarly, we can find out the outstanding administrative and selling expenses by dividing it by 12. Now once I've calculated all this, all I have to do is to find out the estimated working capital. So for that I have calculated the raw material, the work in progress, the finished goods and debtors. Now here I am taking the calculation on the basis of debtors on cost of sales basis. You can put in the figure of debtors on the basis of sales as well. So we've got the total current assets. Now I've got the current liabilities. I've calculated creditors, outstanding wages and outstanding administrative and selling expenses. So total current liabilities is 2,18,583. I reduce the current liabilities from the current assets to find out the working capital. I have been told that 10% should be there for a safety margin. So my estimated working capital is coming as 5,10,638. Right? So any questions on this? On similar lines we had done a question earlier as well, but this was slightly different because here in there we had calculated depreciation. Here depreciation was given to you in this question. It's a 16-mark question which was asked in new syllabus in I think December 2015 examination. Creditor calculation working note. Now just look at here. I will be doing it here only. See, the thing is that 8,40,000 rupees of material has gone in the cost of goods sold. These are the goods which have actually been sold. Okay. So 8,20,000 is the cost of goods sold. So this cost of goods sold is made up of opening stock, add purchases less closing stock. Right? Right, Ganesh? So what we do, we say that because it's a new business, so opening stock would be 0. Purchases, I want to know that what is the amount of purchases. And closing stock, I have calculated it that for 2 months how much of material is there. So I've got the closing stock figures. Right? And I've also purchased the material for work in progress. I've also purchased the material for work in progress. So that also is a part of raw material consumed. Right? Which is not there as a part of 8,40,000. So in this 8,40,000 I will add the work in progress material and I will add the closing stock to find out the total amount of purchases in the year. You getting my point? ये जो 8,40,000 रुपए, this is the cost of the goods which have been sold. But this does not include your material which is in inventory as a closing stock. And this does not include the work in progress material consumed. So इसमें वो दोनों चीजें जब हम ऐड कर देंगे तो total material purchased during the year will come, which is the total, and then we can find out the creditors by dividing it by 12 and multiplying it by 1.5. Is it getting clear now? Or should I explain again? we will take depreciation only if it is mentioned specifically. नहीं, working capital की calculation में depreciation को लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. Yes, if it says it on total cost basis, still we do not take depreciation. Like, you know, basically working capital आप depreciation के लिए तो रखोगे ही नहीं ना. It's theoretically not correct. भाई हम बात कर रहे हैं हमें कितने वर्किंग कैपिटल की जरूरत है, डे टू डे की रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है, अब उसमें डिप्रिसिएशन के लिए पैसा रखने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. सो इट्स academically and theoretically not correct. So that is why we will not take depreciation in our computation. It has just been given to you because actually when you have the numbers, depreciation is included in it. So therefore you have to always remove depreciation to find out the working capital. Okay? Now this was a question that came in the June 16 examination. Working capital of a firm depends on the length of its operating cycle. This has been my favorite question, and I've always asked this question in exam preparatories also, that working capital of a firm depends upon the length of its operating cycle. Now this particular concept, if you look at, it's like, you know, it holds very true. Basically because every business has got its own requirements. There are some businesses where rather than giving credit, we receive money in advance. Like your ऐसे बहुत सारे businesses हैं, अभी exactly एकदम से याद नहीं आ रहा है, but lot of businesses are there where we pay money in advance, right? Your prepaid phones and everything you pay in advance there, right? So Amazon, yes. Amrita, what are we referring to here about depreciation? Yaps. So now we're moving to the next question where we're talking about the length of operating cycle. So आपकी operating cycle क्या है? I hope you remember that we discussed it in the previous class. I told you operating cycle starts from the purchase of raw material. Then to that we add the period for which the raw material is in stock, the period for which it is in work in progress, the period for which it is lying as finished goods, then the period for which the money gets blocked in debtors, and the total period is your operating cycle. Now every firm has got a different operating cycle. It depends upon the kind of business that you are into. So if your operating cycle will be long, definitely your working capital requirement would also be more, right? So therefore the length of operating cycle is a major determinant of a working capital requirement of a firm, because what is operating cycle? Now you have to explain. Operating cycle is the time that goes between the cash outlay for procurement of raw material and ends with the cash realization on the sale of finished goods and realization of sundry debtors. So therefore this particular period, the longer the period, the more the money gets blocked and the higher the requirement for working capital. This operating cycle is a very important concept that is applicable for cash management and for management of working capital, because as is rightly said that the longer the operating cycle, more the financial resources are required by the company. So therefore the management has to be very careful that the working capital, that the operating cycle should not become very, very long, right? So in this operating period, we require the working capital for short term and maybe at times for medium term as well as long term. This completely depends upon the kind of company, but whatever is the requirement, the company must make a cash budget to make its working capital planning. And for that it needs to estimate the future level of sales. That is what we have been doing in the previous questions, right? We are estimating the sales, we are estimating the time for which the funds will get blocked in raw material, the time for which the funds will get blocked in the creditors, in the debtors, the time that we will get from the creditors, the time for delay in payment of wages, etc. And by knowing and by estimating these times in advance, we can make our cash budgets, we can make our estimations for working capital, and we can definitely manage our working capital in a better manner. So therefore, in order to assess the needs of working capital, we have to understand the relationship between sales and debtors, between the sales and the purchases and the creditors, the amount of inventory required, etc., etc. So whatever is the requirement that can be definitely indicated by the operating cycle, right? So that way is like you can very beautifully explain this concept. You can even draw the diagram for operating cycle to explain what is operating cycle, and then you can talk about that if the operating cycle is going to be longer, definitely, like in the previous questions also, if we said that the raw material is in stock for a period of 2 months, the amount becomes more. If we say that the raw material is in stock for a period of 15 days, the amount would become lesser. So the longer the operating cycle, higher would be the requirement of working capital. Is it getting clear? Now in the last examination, a very interesting question came in new syllabus, and some of the students had a problem with this particular question as well. What was this question? It said that Himalaya Limited approached their banker for working capital requirements. The bank has agreed to sanction the same by retaining margins as under. Now in this question, this was the only change which came. The remaining part of the question was not very difficult. The bank has agreed to sanction the same by retaining margins as under: raw material 18%, work in progress 30%, finished goods 20%, and debtors 10%. Now what does this mean? See, when you approach the bank to finance your working capital requirement, as we did in one of the questions in the last class, where I told you that the banker, that when you approach the banker, you have to give an estimate of your working capital requirements. I hope you remember that. When you approach the banker, you have to give an estimation of your working capital requirements, right? So when you approach the banker and when you give an estimation of your working capital requirement, the banker tells you to invest some part of it by yourself, and the remaining part would be financed by the bank, right? So the part which the bank asks you to bring yourself is called the margin money. Okay? The contribution which the business has to bring in for the working capital is called the margin money, and the contribution which the banker gives is over and above the margin money. So when we decide the working capital limits which will be provided by the bank, we will have to reduce this margin money to find out the amount of support that we can get from the banker, right? So the banker has said that for the total raw material stock that you require, 18% has to be funded by you, right? For the total work in progress amount that you require, 30% has to be funded by you. For the total 20% finished goods that you want the funding, 20% of it should be funded by you, right? So this is the margin money which you have to bring in. Now you don't have to give this money to the bank. You have to bring this money in the business, right? Because you are giving an estimate to the banker. So the banker is telling you that you first bring in this much of money, and then the remaining part would be contributed by us. Fine with us? Yeah. So this margin means self-financing. Okay. No, not in terms of turnover. It is in terms of, it has been given to you. Raw materials 18%. Work in progress 30%. So whatever would be the requirement for raw material, 18% of that has to be funded by the company. Okay. So now let us first project the working capital requirements, and then we go to bank funding. So the proposal says that it is estimated that the total annual sales would be 18 lakhs, cost of production would be 1440, raw materials purchase is 935, monthly expenditure is 50,000, anticipated opening stock of raw material is 180, and anticipated closing stock of raw material is 155. Okay. Inventory norms are raw material 2 months, work in progress 15 days, and finished goods 1 month. The firm enjoys a credit of 15 days on its purchases and allows 1 month credit on its supplies. On sales orders, the company has received an advance of rupees 2,50,000. You are required to find out the working capital required by the company and the working capital limits likely to be approved by the banker. Okay. So is the question clear now? Can I move to the solution? Okay. So this is your question. Now let us first find out the working capital requirements. So for that, we have been told that the company has the annual raw material purchased is 9,35,000, but it had an opening stock of raw material of 1,80,000 and closing stock of 1,55,000, right? So in that situation, we can find out the annual consumption, which is equals to opening stock add purchases less closing stock, which is 9,60,000, right? Which is 9,60,000. This is your annual consumption of raw material. So if I've got the annual numbers, I can find out the monthly numbers. So my monthly consumption is 80,000 rupees. Similarly, I can find out my annual sales have been given to me as 18 lakh rupees. So my monthly sales are 1,50,000 rupees. So I can also find out my monthly cost of production. My monthly cost of production is 14,40,000, which has been given to me as annual cost of production. I divide it by 12 to find out the monthly cost of production. Now, why am I doing the monthly calculations? Because it will make my job easier. I was told that for the working capital requirement by the company, we need raw materials 2-month consumption. So I have got monthly consumption. I have got the monthly consumption of 80,000 rupees. So 2 months would be 1,60,000 rupees. Right? Then work in progress, I was told 15 days of cost of production. Now cost of production is there with me as 1,20,000. 15 days is 60,000 rupees. Finished goods 1 month cost of production. So cost of production has been given to me. I'll just take it as 1,20,000. Sundry debtors is 1 month of sales. It has been given to me in the question. The company enjoys a credit of 15 days on its purchases and allows 1 month credit on its supplies. So we have calculated it on sales. You can even calculate it on cost of production also. That's not a wrong thing to do. Now expenditure for 1 month, because expenses are paid on a monthly basis. So 1 month of expenses are given to me in the question of 50,000 rupees. Monthly expenditure has been given to me as 50,000 rupees in the question. So I've picked up that. So total working capital is raw material plus work in progress plus finished goods plus your expenditures. So that makes it as 5,40,000. From this we reduce the creditors. Now creditors is for purchases plus the amount of it's like 9 lakh, whatever is the total amount of raw material purchased during the year, that has been given to me as 9,35,000. And I have got 15 days purchases, so 0.5 divided by 12. So I get the amount of creditors as 38,958. Then I've got advance, which I've received on sales order, because that is also my liability. If I've received an advance, it is my liability. Now why is it a liability? Because I have not sold the goods as yet. So this money which I have received is lying with me. So that's my liability. So once I've got this as an advance, I reduce that also. So my net working capital is 2,51,041 rupees 70 paisa. Okay. So if I look at these numbers, I think the numbers are just the numbers as were familiar to me in the previous questions. But the banking thing was newly added. So let me go to the banking thing now. Working capital limit which is set by the bankers is whatever was your working capital requirement. So your working capital requirement for raw material was 1,60,000. Banker says 18% you will have to bring in. So 18% you reduce, banker will provide you 1,31,200. Similarly, your work in progress requirement was 60,000 rupees. Banker said 30% is your margin. So you have to bring in, banker will give you 42,000 rupees. Finished goods is 1 month cost of production. So your finished goods which you have is, you've already calculated, is 1,20,000 rupees. Banker says 20% margin has to be brought in by you. So you get in 24,000, remaining 96,000 will be provided by the bank. Similarly, for sundry debtors, 10% margin was to be provided by you. So remaining 1,35,000 will be provided by the banker. So the total credit limit which can be approved by the bank is 4,04,200. Is 4,04,200. So now in general, when we talk about this particular question, I have one observation. If you look at the net working capital requirement, it is 2,51,000. And if I go by this particular question, it is coming that the banker can provide me 4,04,000. No banker is going to provide you the limits like this. If I look at the situation practically, banker is not going to provide me the limits. From this 4,04,200, the banker will reduce the creditors and the advance received from suppliers, and then only he will calculate the credit limit in the practical situations. But that was not given to you in the question, so that is why the solution does not contain that information. Okay? So this was the kind of question which came up in the last examination. Students were a little uncomfortable with this question because they had not practiced this kind of a question. Now this is where, now when we talk about margin money and all these concepts, people who are actually working in the industry, people who are actually working in the industry, for them this margin, or even if anybody is doing a very small business, this margin money is something which is a very familiar term. But actually what happens is that as a student, because we do not have that kind of an exposure, so we tend to get very confused with these kinds of terminologies. So this is where the difference comes, and for that we have to be a little prepared, right? And it's a 16 mark compulsory question that really was difficult for some of the students. But in this kind of a question, if it comes in the examination, what I would suggest is that the first part of it, like working capital required by the company, to that extent you should be very, very confident, and you should try, because do not get panicked by the first few numbers if those numbers are not going to be used in the first part of the question, right? So at least do the first part of the question. The breakup would in general situations be 12 marks for the first part, and the 4 marks would be there for the second part, because the first part has got more calculations, so higher weightage will be given to the first part and lower weightage will be given to the second part. At times students feel that if a particular question has got 2 parts, then it is going to be equally divided between the 2 parts, which is not the fact. So please don't panic when you see any question which comes like you're not prepared about it. Whatever best you can do about that particular question, try to do that without actually getting panicked or getting disturbed by looking at the numbers. Step marking is always there, and that is why more the steps in a particular calculation, higher the marks are. So if the estimation of working capital, because it was the estimation of working capital which required more calculation in that question, so therefore that part would definitely be having a higher weightage as compared to the second part. Okay, so that was where I wanted to give you some insights into the practical aspects of estimation of working capital. But as I discussed with you in the last class, also and as I told you that this is going to be one of the major determining factors of your examination result. If this question comes in the examination, it is going to come for minimum 10 and maximum 16 marks. So you have to practice minimum 20, 25, 30 questions from this particular concept of estimation of working capital. You can start working on it now, because as time progresses, you would be able to do more and more questions. This is kind of a short question of 16 marks in the examination. This completely depends upon your destiny. It may be a very simple question, but generally these days they're asking something or the other is added to the question to make it a little more tricky. Now I'm moving towards the theoretical aspects of working capital, because this is a chapter from where we're getting theory questions as well. This chapter has got almost 20% weightage in your FTFM paper. So it's a very, very, very important chapter, and you have to do it very, very carefully. So when we talk about working capital, I told you that that working capital is that part of your business that if you have to balance it. You cannot have excess of working capital, because that will make your business unprofitable. And you cannot have a deficiency of working capital, because that will be again disastrous for your business, because you would not be able to meet your short-term liabilities, you would not be able to provide the product to your customer, and that also does not give a good image of the company. So therefore, if you carry these current assets, it has got a carrying cost, right? Because money gets invested in it, and when money gets invested in it, the money has got an opportunity cost. Further, if you keep a very high stock of raw material or finished goods or work in progress, then you need to have warehouses for that. So that is also a cost which goes into it, right? But if you do not keep this working capital in the adequate levels, then you also incur a shortage cost, because if the material will not be there, then you will have to arrange it at a very short notice, and then you would not be able to get the right kind of a deal. If the amount is required, if the money in cash is required at a shorter notice, then you will be arranging it at a higher rate of interest. So therefore, if you keep it high, then you have a carrying cost. If you keep it low, then you've got a shortage cost. So you need to have a balance. You need to have the right level of working capital in your business. That's where the EOQ concept is also handy. But now let me take it further. I said that I'm using the EOQ concepts only, that if I increase my investment in working capital, in that situation, the higher the investment in current assets, the lower the shortage costs, right? So my shortage costs will come down. But if I keep the working capital, if I invest high in the current assets, my carrying costs go up. So one of the costs is coming down and the other cost is going up. So that means I have to find out that point where they are going to intersect with each other, where the carrying cost is equal to the shortage cost, because this is the point where my total cost is going to be minimal, right? So I should have this much of investment in my current assets. Now the slope of this curve, shortage cost and carrying cost, will differ from business to business. In one business, your carrying cost may be increasing at this rate. In another business, it might be increasing at this, right? So you similarly for the shortage cost. So for every business, the graph would be different. For every situation, the graph would be different. But it is advisable that you invest in current assets an amount so that your carrying costs are equal to your shortage cost. So how much should I invest in current assets? Now this question is a very difficult question, but this completely depends upon the kind of business policy that you have. There are some businesses which have got a flexible policy, so they keep a very large amount of cash and marketable securities balances. They keep large amounts of inventory, and they give liberal terms to their customers also. On the other hand, there can be some businesses which will be using the restrictive policy. Now restrictive policy means that they would be having a very low investment in securities or in the cash balances. They will keep a small amount of inventory, and they will not give any credit to their customers also. So now, depending upon the kind of policy you have, you will decide the level of your current assets. Now in what situation should the policy be flexible, and in what situations the policy should be strict? Now this is what we want to understand. In what are the situations in which I should follow a flexible policy, and what are the situations in which I should follow a strict policy? See, a flexible policy will be most appropriate where carrying costs are lower as compared to the shortage cost. Now if you look at this particular graph, supposing it's a business where if the investment in current assets is going to be high, your shortage cost is going to be lower. But if the investment is going to be high, your carrying cost does not increase. You're seeing that the slope of the carrying cost here, just do not see this particular line. Just look at the graph. You can see here that up to this point the carrying costs are very, very low. It has started increasing somewhere over here. So in this kind of a business where the carrying cost is not very high, that means that this business has got surplus funds, and this business does not have any problem in keeping a high amount of stock. They've got their own warehouses, and they've got their own uh, mechanisms. Like these days, if you study about Walmart and all, so they've got large size warehouses, and they are able to maintain a high level of stock there. So these are the people who can have a carrying cost, but their shortage cost is very high because they cannot afford a shortage, because they've got that kind of a brand that if it is found that Walmart is short of stock, or if it is found that Walmart is not able to pay to its suppliers, there would be a very bad impact on their goodwill. So they need to have a higher investment in current assets, and they need to have a flexible current asset policy. But there are certain businesses which are having a restrictive policy, and this policy is appropriate for those businesses where the carrying cost is very high as compared to the shortage cost. Like if you look at some small time jewelers, etc. Now for them, because the raw material, the material cost is so very high that for them maintaining the stock is a very difficult proposition. So they feel that, okay, if a customer comes to me and says that I want a particular design, I will either arrange it from someone or I will get it made in a day or two. Right? So therefore, these are the people where the shortage costs is not very high, but the carrying cost is very high. So this kind of a people should keep a low amount of investment in the current assets. You are able to follow? So every business has got its own situations, and depending upon the kind of business we are in, we have to decide what kind of a working capital policy is appropriate for us. So that is where we were deciding upon the level of investment in current assets. Now the second question, which is again an important question, is how should I finance this working capital? If I have to buy these current assets, should I get the money from short-term sources, or should I get the money from long-term sources? Right, this is the question that I discussed in one of the earlier classes as well, where initially you said that short-term funds are required to buy current assets, but then we realized that no, because ideally the current ratio is 2:1, so there is some part of current assets which is financed by the long-term funds as well. I hope you remember that. So if you look at the ideal world in which you also told me, you said that short-term assets should always be financed by short-term debt and long-term assets should be financed by long-term debt. So in this kind of a world, the net working capital should always be zero, but this is an ideal situation which does not exist and which is not doable kind of a situation. So in general, you can have again a conservative policy or a flexible policy, or you can have a very strict policy for financing your working capital. Now if someone is very flexible, in that situation what he will do? He will use all long-term funds. He will use all long-term funds to buy current assets. Right? So it will have large investment, a large value of long-term financing to finance the current assets. Now there would be times when there would be surplus of funds, isn't it? When I have kept the long-term funds for buying current assets, so there would be certain situations when there would be seasonal variations, and you might not be requiring raw material, or the debtors have already paid, and you're surplus. So in that situation, this business will invest the surplus amount in marketable securities. Okay? So you're getting my point? It's a flexible policy where we are saying that we are going to fund the current assets from long-term sources, and anytime whenever we are going to have surplus funding, we will invest it in the marketable securities. Fine? This kind of a policy is called a flexible policy. A lot of funding is coming from long-term sources. Second is an aggressive policy. This is for new kind of startups where they are really fighting with the funds. So there they say that no, this is not the right policy. We cannot utilize our long-term funds for short-term financing completely. So what we should do, the permanent, now let us divide this this current assets or this working capital into permanent portion of working capital and temporary portion of working capital. This is also a concept which I discussed with you in the previous classes. I said that there is some part of working capital which has got more or less a permanent feature, and there is some part of it which is seasonal in nature. So those who want to go for a restrictive policy, they say that okay, the permanent portion of working capital should be financed by long-term sources. But whatever are the temporary mismatches, whatever are the seasonal requirements, they should come from short-term financing. For that, we have to arrange from the short-term loans or from banks or from anywhere else. So the basic part of the working capital should come from the long-term sources. But whatever are going to be the seasonal variations, whatever are going to be temporary mismatches, they are going to be funded by the short-term financing. So if you will have surplus, like in the previous policy, the flexible policy, we said that we have got higher funds, so there we said that okay, then invest it in marketable securities. If we are short of funds, we will say that we will have to arrange it from short-term sources, from short-term bank financing, etc., etc. Now, it can be by taking a cash credit limit from the bank, it can be from taking short-term loans from the banks, etc., etc. Now, let us look at a compromise policy. Let us not be very strict and let us not be very, very flexible. Let's have a compromise policy. Now, what is this compromise policy? The compromise policy says that, okay, let us invest the permanent portion of fixed assets, a permanent portion of working capital from the long-term sources, right? Let us finance the permanent portion of the current assets from the long-term sources, and then what we should do is that let us go a little more higher. Some part of the temporary mismatches also, let it be financed by the long-term sources. So up to this point, we finance from the long-term sources. Up to this point, right? From this point, we increase this point to slightly above that, and beyond that, whatever is going to happen, there we are going to arrange the short-term financing. So if I am reaching from this particular level, from yellow line to pink line, there might be certain situations where I would be having surplus of funds that I will invest in the marketable securities. So we should not be having, we should be slightly more comfortable from in case of current asset financing. So with the compromise policy, the firm keeps a reserve of liquidity which it uses to initially finance seasonal variations in current assets needs, and then they use the short-term borrowing. So they have got some reserve of liquidity which can be used in case of immediate requirements. There is no strict answer to which policy is the best, but if you keep a high level of cash reserves, you've got a low chance of financial distress. You would not be wasting time in finding out the short-term sources of financing. But the loss is that this cash reserve does not earn you any income. It has got an opportunity cost, and you would be losing on that opportunity cost if you keep a high level of cash reserves. But in case you have a strict policy, in that situation, again, there might be chances that you would be in a situation of financial distress. So therefore, ideally, we say that long-term sources should be used for long-term assets and short-term sources should be used for short-term assets. But let us be more practical. See, if you want to use the graphs, I would say that you should use the graphs, right? Because that makes your answer a little more self-explanatory. You can use these graphs. It'll really add value to your answers. It does not consume much of time. Just drawing 2-3 lines. But yeah, please don't make the graphs using a pen. Please use a pencil, and if possible, you can slightly color it also, so that definitely it will take some time. It will take some time, but not too much of time. So that is how generally we suggest that permanent current assets should be financed by long-term financing. Temporary current assets should be financed by short-term financing. Okay. So how long does this take to make this graph? Now, coming to back to the theory questions on this concepts, on the concept of working capital, there is 90% chance that yeah, 3 minutes is not a very long time, because otherwise also you would be writing a theory question, it takes time. So as I was saying, but if these 3 minutes can fetch you 1 mark, I think there's no harm in doing that. Coming back to the questions here. So as I said, that from this particular chapter you have been getting various kinds of theory questions, like playing with float is a risky proposition. Now what is a float? The bankers like Dipali would know it better, but I'll try to explain. See what happens now. This float concept has now become a little redundant, but it's still applicable. Actually, it is more applicable when we used to issue checks. So what happens is, supposing I've got 100 rupees in my bank account and I issue you a check. Now I know that I have issued you the check today. So if you deposit this check today also in your bank account, in that situation it will go in clearing tomorrow. It will hit my bank account after 2 days. So I've got my bank account will be debited only after 2 days. So for these 2 days, if I'm using the money which I've already against which I've already issued a check, that is called playing with float. Now when we talk about a strict working capital policy, what we do, that we try to maximize the utilization of the funds that we have. So we do not keep any surplus, and rather what we try to do, that as much as we can use the money. So even if it is available for a day, we try to use it, right? But this playing with float is definitely a risky proposition, because there is a criminal there is a criminal charge against someone whose check gets dishonored, and then it also has an impact on the market reputation of a person. So therefore this kind of a strategy of playing with float is definitely a very risky proposition, and the business, the check can bounce, and in that situation it will have a bad impact on your market reputation as well. So generally it is not recommended, but yes, if we have a very strict working capital policy, this kind of a situation can be seen. Next question is, failure of a firm is technical if it is unable to meet its current obligations. Now this is a question which is relevant not only for this chapter but also for the first chapter. In the first chapter we talked about the technical insolvency, where I told you that technical insolvency means that you've got huge investment in fixed assets, but you're not able to meet up your small current liability. That is a situation of a technical insolvency. So this is where you have a very strict working capital policy, and you do not keep surplus with you. In that situation, definitely a situation can come where there is a situation which is called a situation of technical insolvency. Then comes the third question. It says, current asset policy and current asset financing reflect working capital policy. Now if this kind of a question comes in examination, you've got so many graphs to make. You can talk about a flexible policy, you can talk about a conservative policy, you can talk about the financing policy, and you can talk about the level of investment in current assets. So while showing the level of investment in current assets, you can show the carrying cost and the shortage cost, and while showing the current asset financing policy, you can show the investment in current assets coming from long-term sources and from short-term sources. So you can make 4 graphs in this kind of a question, and if every graph is going to take 3 minutes, so I think if we have to make 4 of them, there would be some economies of scale as well. So we would be able to make 4 graphs in 6 minutes. Now coming to the next, which is permanent working capital financed by current liabilities has its pitfalls. Again, you can use a graph there where you can say that permanent portion of the working capital should be financed by long-term sources rather than current liabilities, because this is a permanent portion, right? and it has got its own pitfalls, because it may lead to a situation of technical insolvency if you're going to finance it by current liabilities, right? So this will reduce our current ratio as well, and this will lead to a liquidity crisis in the company. So use these kinds of terms, right? You can take a question to different directions, but using the technical language. So when we talk about permanent working capital, just you can even explain what is permanent working capital. Then you can explain that what kind of pitfalls can it lead to, right? So answer these kinds of questions very, very confidently and think very practical, right? And even if you want to move from financial management to accounting, where you are moving from permanent working capital, if you want to move to current ratio, and if you want to talk about calculation of working capital just in a small line, you can do that as well. The next question is, adequacy of current assets is a myth. Now this is a very interesting question. So far we are saying that if you have got a higher investment in current assets, the firm is safer, it would not be in a situation of technical insolvency. Now the next question that comes says that adequacy of current assets is a myth. Now there are two reasons to look at this, two reasons to accept this statement. The first is that we are saying that the current assets are adequate, but have we seen the health of current assets? Because there are so many businesses who will have a very high investment in inventory, but the inventory has turned out to be a dead stock and it is not sellable. So that current asset is not adequate for us, right? So rather it is eating away a space in our warehouse. So that is also a cost, right? And the second thing why an adequacy of current asset is a myth is that we try to find out the level of current assets. We try to find out the level of current assets at a particular day or at a particular point of time. But many a times during the year, there have been situations where there were seasons and there were off seasons, and this current asset that you are showing on 31st of March might not be relevant to that particular point of time, right? You are saying that it is quite adequate today, but is it the peak season? Is it the lean season? Is it the average season? So this particular number that you are showing on your balance sheet is something which cannot be relied upon, because in the complete course of year you have had different kinds of situations, right? Now on this financing policies also, let us look at a practical question which came in December 15 examination in the new syllabus. Saraswati Engineering Company is considering its working capital investment for the next year. Estimated fixed assets and current liabilities for the next year are 2.60 crore and 2.34 crore respectively. So fixed assets have been given to you and current liabilities have been given to you. Sales and profit before interest and taxes depend upon investment in current assets, particularly inventory and debtors. So whatever is going to be your profit before interest and tax, it says that this completely depends upon how much of inventory you keep and how much of book debtors you are ready to give. Because yes, definitely it has an impact, isn't it? If the firm decides to increase its credit policy, it wants to make provide more credit to its customers, definitely there would be some impact on the sales. So investment in current assets will definitely decide the sales and the profit before interest and taxes. The company is examining the following alternative working capital policies. The first working capital policy is conservative. In that situation, there would be an investment of 4.5 crores in current assets. Estimated sales will be 12.30 crores and profit before interest and tax would be 1.23 crores. If the company goes for moderate policy, investment in current assets would go lower to 3.9 crores. The sales will get lower to 11.5 crores and profit before interest and taxes would be 1.15 crore. If the company follows an aggressive working capital policy, further the investment in current assets will go down from 3.9 to 2.6 crores estimated sales would be 10 crores and profit before interest and taxes would be 1 crore. You are required to calculate the rate of return on total assets for each policy. Now, total assets includes what? Total assets will include not only the current assets but also the fixed assets, right? And you have to find out return on total assets. Now, what is the formula? What is the formula for return on total assets? It's a simple formula of accounting. Profit upon total assets. Very good. So profit upon total assets, profit has been given to us. Total assets, because the fixed assets have been given to us as 2.6 crore. So we can add it to the current assets and find out the total assets. Now once I've got the profit and once I've got the total assets, I can use this formula to find out that which particular policy would be the best. So I've got current assets, I've got fixed assets. I added the two together in 3 different policies, and I got the profit before interest and taxes also in 3 different policies. I divided profit before interest and taxes with the total assets. So in the conservative policy, my return on total assets is coming as 17.32%. In moderate, it is coming as 17.69%. And in aggressive policy, I've got the highest return of 19.23%. So by following a tight policy whereby I kept my minimal investment in current assets, I have been able to increase my return on investment, my return on total assets. Because the total assets remain, the fixed assets remain the same in all the 3 situations. So therefore, even by increasing the amount in current assets, my return on assets was not increasing so highly because my profit was not increasing so high. It was increasing, but it was not increasing at that pace at which the investment in current assets was required to increase. You got my point? So you have to be very, very careful when we look at the investment in current assets, because it does not always work that if you increase the investment in current assets, it will add to the profitability of business. It can add to some profits, but we will have to compare it with the cost of funds as well. You getting my point? Another question is that comment on the following statements. Current assets are financed by current liabilities. Again, there's a full question on financing of current assets. I think you can do it. There was no meaning of mentioning of current liabilities in this. It was not required, just to confuse you. So current assets are financed by current liabilities. Though, yes, Ganesh, even if, if these current liabilities would have been changing, right now they are constant. If they would have been changing, then we could have calculated, we could have seen some benefit of it. But the current liabilities are keeping constant, so there's no point adding it in any kind of a computation. So now come to the next, which is current assets are financed by current liabilities. True or false? True or false? Partially true and partially false. See, you have to say that current assets are financed not only by current liabilities but also by the long-term sources, right? So rather than saying it as partly true and partly false, you can say that these are financed not only by current assets. Some part of current assets is financed by current liabilities, but a major portion of current assets is financed by the long-term sources. The balance sheet fails to depict the exact picture of current assets. This I've already discussed with you, that because on the balance sheet date, whatever is the situation of current assets, that situation does not hold true in all situations. Now coming to these solutions, current assets are financed by current liabilities. We can say that the financing of current assets is a trade-off between profitability and risk. Some people say that current assets should be financed by current liabilities, but this depends upon the economic conditions prevailing at a particular time, requiring the company to keep business resources liquid without compromising on profitability. This is one of the most important decisions of financial management as to how the current assets are going to be financed. There are two sources, short-term sources and long-term sources. Choice of funding depends upon realization of current assets. If current assets can be realized within a short span of time, they can be financed from current liabilities. Firms can realize current assets and then can meet out its current liabilities. However, if the same is not the case, then they are to be financed from long-term sources, as not meeting current liabilities on time may create short-term liquidity problems. The next was that the balance sheet fails to depict an exact picture of current assets. The answer holds true here, because current assets are are required on day-to-day basis, and on a particular date. If you look at the current assets, it might not be representative of the state of affairs which have been there throughout the year, right? So we have to look at, if we have to look at how the business is doing with respect to current assets, we have to look at the average of the weekly or monthly or quarterly holding of current assets, depending upon the kind of industry it is, right? And second thing is that, as I told you, that a business can have seasonal peaks and seasonal lows of working capital requirement. Now, if it is like a fruit processing unit, like those who make maza and all that, now for them they would be stocking more in summers, isn't it, when the crop is harvested. So if we look at their balance sheet on 31st of March, I think the current assets will not show you the current asset figure will not show you the right image, because they would be having a higher stock somewhere in April or May or June or July, where that will be their peak holding season. So therefore, when we talk about a higher level of current assets, it's just a fiction, because when we go and realize these current assets, we realize that now this is something which is just an elaboration, that even if we have got a higher level of current assets, these current assets might not be very liquid. It may contain some obsolete items, some packing materials, or some rejected goods are also there in the current assets. So therefore, we cannot depend upon the amount of current assets which has been mentioned in the balance sheet, because that does not give you a very clear picture. Another question that came once in examination was the differentiate between liquidity management and treasury management. Now, treasury management as a complete topic I would be discussing with you in short. We would not be going in length on this particular topic. But liquidity management we are discussing, we're talking about that how much of current assets should be there and how they should be financed. That is what is liquidity management all about. But when we talk about treasury management is a wider term than liquidity management, but because it includes not only the liquidity management, but also the foreign exchange management, it includes the cash management, it includes your day-to-day requirements of everybody, and treasury is a department which is headed by senior people. Liquidity can be managed even by a clerical level person, right? So the treasury operations are held by senior people, and because many a times they include complex financial decisions like foreign exchange rates, derivatives, interest rate swaps, etc. So liquidity management is simpler than the treasury management, though it is a part of treasury. Treasury is a wider term which includes liquidity management as well. Then came another question like working capital leverage and capital structure leverage are two different concepts. Now we have discussed about capital structure leverage in the previous classes, right? You remember that we discussed and we said that what is capital structure leverage? We said it is EBIT divided by EPS. EPS divided by EBIT, right? Now it was just a second, EBIT divided by EPS, right? And capital structure leverage, if you want to look at in terms of percentages, then it would be percentage change in EPS divided by percentage change in EBIT. Now, when we talk about working capital leverage, now this is a new concept which has come in front of us. What is this? See, it says that if I increase my working capital, in capital structure leverage, what do you increase? We increase the loan amount, the borrowings amount. In working capital leverage, we say that if we increase our investment in current assets, will we be able to increase our income? Will we be able to increase our return on investment? So by increasing the investment in current assets, can we increase the return on investment? That is what is called the working capital leverage. They are different concepts, definitely. Both of them, they're coming from leverage, but in capital structure leverage, we talk about the increase in borrowings in business. In working capital leverage, we talk about increase in investment in current assets in business. Yeah, but both ways we want to increase, have a better return for the investors. I think this would be the last question. No, one more is there. Okay. Then we have a firm having high current ratio may not necessarily be treated as being favorably placed as regards payment of its current liabilities. I think I've already discussed some part of this question, that even if a firm has got a high current ratio, that does not mean that it would be able to pay its current liabilities, because it depends upon the realization of current assets. What is the situation of current assets? If it includes some obsolete stock, if it includes some bad debts, if it includes, certain kinds of assets from which cannot be converted into cash, in that situation, we cannot say that a high current ratio will always be leading to, payment of current liabilities. Yeah, devalued stock can also be there. So therefore, we have to look at as to what is the composition of current assets, and in the next class, rather, I would be moving towards that aspect only. I'll be talking to you about the various parts of current assets now. After finishing off with estimation of working capital, we'll be talking about the different parts of current assets. That means we'll be first talking about inventory management, then we'll be talking about debtors management, then we'll be talking about the cash management, right? Because first was that how they should be financed. First question was how much should be investment in current assets. Second question was how it is going to be financed. Third question would be what should be the composition of these current assets. That means how much should be the contribution of inventory, how much should be the contribution of debtors, how much should be the contribution of cash in this current assets. Right. So we'll be going now further in the discussion in the next class. But before that, I just wanted to finish with some of the theory questions on general aspects. There are various sources of permanent working capital. Sources of permanent working capital means how this permanent working capital is going to be financed. We said that permanent portion of working capital should ideally be financed by long-term funds to some extent. Yes. So long-term funds, the basic source of long-term funds is the owner's funds. The money that is a capital, which can be, so initially when the business starts, it is the owner's capital which is used to fund the current assets, right? So this can be retained to some extent in the business permanently, or it can be coming from the borrowed funds. Long-term borrowings can be in form of bonds, or it can be in form of debentures, it can be in form of long-term bank loans, or loans from financial institutions, and even short-term funds can be used to fund the permanent sources of working capital, right? So these are, like, when we talk about working capital management, I suggest that it is not only the practical questions which are important, but the theoretical concepts are equally important. So for that, you have to read the theory portion not only from one reference book, read it from various reference books. Because if you read it from one reference book, maybe that some of the concepts will go missing. So read it because this chapter is one of the most important chapters. I'm again and again telling you that it is not only, and it is not over as yet. I would be discussing with you inventory management and debtors management now. So I have just covered with half of the chapter right now. The remaining half I have to still discuss with you. And from this half also you can see so many questions coming in examination. So from the remaining half also you would be seeing so many questions coming in the examination. So as total, this chapter is very, very, very important. Make sure that you read it from 2-3 reference books and not only one reference book. Right? So with this, I think we would close for today. Can we? In the exam preparatory this weekend, you would be getting questions from this particular PPT. We would be talking about the theoretical concepts of working capital management and estimation of working capital management. Okay? Right? So with this we close for today. I shall be available for your queries tomorrow in the evening in case you've got any queries. Yes, it's a very long chapter. It will take almost 2 weeks for us to finish this chapter. As I said, it's a very important chapter as well. So I shall be available tomorrow evening for any of your questions before the exam preparatory. So you can write to me on WhatsApp or you can call me if you've got longer queries. Anytime, between 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock you can call me also. But I want you to read the chapter thoroughly and come back prepared for exam preparatory. Okay? I've already uploaded the first part of the PPT. I would be uploading the second part as well. Okay? So with this, good